Good evening, Dr. Somnath, Professor Karat, my dear old friend, Dr. Vijay Bhatkar, Shri Sul Ambekar ji, Shri Shekhar Mande ji, Vivekanand ji, Shri Sharma ji, and all the distinguished members of the Vijnana Bharati and delegates coming from different parts of the country. I consider it as a great honor to be part of Vijnana Bharati's deliberations, and I have been lucky that whenever there has been a major event, Vijnana Bharati has always made me a part of it. My coming over here is also due to a phone call from Mr. Vivekanand that I should be here today. Fortunately, I could shuffle some schedules and could come over. The only thing I did not know that it was a valedictory function. I was thinking that it is some kind of a session. So I told him I am going to talk to you on energy. So he said, you come here, you talk on whatever you want to talk. So thanks for giving me that freedom, and thanks for listening to me on a subject which we have already discussed over the last 2 days. I'm going to rush through some of the things because of paucity of time, but the fact remains that we have energy as one of our major area of concern. Because if you look at energy, why we are looking at energy today? Mainly because of the reason that we need more and more energy. And whatever ways and means of producing energy are there, they are responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, and these emissions are responsible for the climate change. We all know that 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions are nearly 90% of all CO2 emissions. And most of them are human activities like our power generation, manufacturing, agriculture, land use, transportation, and so on. Besides, of course, there are natural reasons, but it is the human drivers which are largely responsible for the global warming. So, often it has been said that India has been responsible, or the developing nations are responsible for polluting. But I want to give you a figure which we presented in the G20, that 75% of the world greenhouse gas emissions, the figure is of 2020, are coming from the developed nations, that is G20 countries. And India, out of the 6.8 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent which is coming from the global, we only contribute about 2.9 tons of and per year, which is less than about 45%. And between 1850 and 2021, our contribution has been less than 4%. So that is so these kind of things are not very important. This is the era of sustainability, and one of the sustainable development goal is goal number 7, which is basically in respect to energy, that we should ensure sustainable energy for humanity, nurturing the quality of life from all aspects known to men. And 3 pillars are energy access, energy efficiency, and the clean and affordable energy. So our trilemma is that energy security, which is basically management of primary energy supply, energy infrastructure, and ability to provide for all. Energy equity is accessibility and affordability of energy supply across the population. And environment sustainability is providing all the energy demand without polluting, and hence resorting to the renewable sources and low carbon strategies. That is what we are talking of. If you look at all of us, what are the sources of energy production? These are globally, fossil fuels are producing energy about 86%, and renewable and nuclear is only about 14%. Whereas in the case of India, our fossil fuels are contributing about 84%, and renewable and nuclear are producing only about 16%. So that is the kind of change we have as far as these things are concerned. Now, what are the factors which are contributing, what are the sectors which are contributing to the pollution. If you look at that, our greenhouse gas emissions in the India 2019 figure is about 1332 million tons of carbon dioxide comes from the industry, power sector. Industry is another one, transport is third one, and then agriculture and others. And there has been a 300% increase in the greenhouse gas emissions from what it was there earlier. So we have, although we have done some work, so 33% is the change in the energy intensity between 2019 from 2005. How much energy we'll need? NITI Aayog has been given this task to evaluate how much money, how much energy we'll need. So if the total energy supply is seen, about 9,647 terawatt hours is what we have today. If we continue with the business as usual, by 2047 it will be 2.2 times, and if it is go to net zero, which has been identified in 2047, that pathway, it will be about 2.1 times. And the demand will also go in the same way, about 2.4 times and 2.1 times by about 2047 in two scenarios. But what will be the share of the coal in this? If you find that today we are about 49% energy coming from the coal. In 2047 it will be 37%, and when you take net zero scenario, it will be about 29%. That means even in 2047, coal will still be one of the sources for producing energy. But the coal will not be used the way we are using today. It will be using to the clean coal technologies with net zero commitments. That will be the way we will be using the coal. If we have to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario, that means the temperature should not exceed 1.5 degree. There has been a simulation done by NITI in which globally we have to reduce about 36.9 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year, in which renewable should be 25%, energy conservation and efficiency should contribute 25%, electrification 20%, and so on. For India, it should be 1.4 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year, where the demand of electrification and efficiency will be about 51%, green hydrogen about 15%, and others. So this is the kind of things we have to do if we have to really make 1.5 degrees Celsius as a reality. All this is feasible only if we follow a strategy which requires a few enablers and few strategies. There are two sets of enablers. One is the coherence and stable policy framework. Another one is the investment and financing shifts. And the four strategies which are essential are the decarbonization of the power combined with extended electrification and decarbonization of activities that cannot be easily electrified. Accelerating in the pace of energy productivity and improvement, and optimization of the fossil fuel use within the overall carbon budget constraint. Then only you can get the transition to low carbon energy. All of you know that we as a country have made commitments in the COP 26, 27, 28. And as per that commitment, our NDC targets are 50% installed power capacity of non-fossil by 2030, 45% reduction in emission intensity by 2030, additional carbon sink of about 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030, and achieving net carbon emissions by 2070. This is our NDC targets which we have given. What is the strategy which country has decided? It has decided that we will do industrial decarbonization, we will use clean coal technologies, we will use carbon capture, utilization and storage, we will use alternate fuels like methanol, ethanol and ammonia. We should use nuclear power for base load operations along with the renewables. We should use commercial energy storage systems, and we will go for natural gas and green hydrogen for other aspects of energy production, and we will base our things on sustainable mobility, rather than the present fossil fuel mobility. For this, the clean coal technologies are important. So instead of using supercritical plants, we will use advanced ultra supercritical plants where the efficiency will go up to about 47% and emissions will come down drastically. We will use carbon capture and utilization. All the industrial sector, including the power, industry and others, they contribute significantly. So if we use CCUS, carbon capture, utilize or store in the ocean or in the basalt rocks, then we can get about 63.86% of emissions addressable by CCUS. We can do that. Other one is use of green hydrogen or hydrogen. We have announced the National Green Hydrogen Mission, which has got a global hub. India should become a global hub for hydrogen with a total outlay of about 19,744 crores. Green hydrogen, for which we are incentivizing the manufacturing of the hydrogen. We are incentivizing the electrolyzer manufacturing. We are incentivizing the other transportation and mobility aspect. But if the green hydrogen has to become a reality, the cost of electrolyzer has to be reduced by 80%. The electrolyzer efficiency has to be raised to 76%, and the power which is needed for electrolysis should come down to at the rate of 2 rupees per unit. I don't know how many of you have ever thought what is required if we had to make 5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030. You need 211 gigawatts of solar power. You need about 141,000 to 191,000 hectares of land, and you need about 160 billion liters of water per year if we had to achieve this kind of a goal of 5 million tons by 2030. So my suggestion is that while we will work for the green hydrogen, we should grow from blue hydrogen to green hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is one in which it can be produced from the fossil fuels, coal and others, but you should capture carbon dioxide. It will cost only about $1 to $1.5 per kg, whereas the present green hydrogen costs about $5 to $6 per kg. Hydrogen, if you use by electrolysis using the Indian power grid, adds about 30 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions per kg of hydrogen, whereas the blue hydrogen adds only about 1.7 kg of carbon dioxide per kg of hydrogen. And hence, blue hydrogen will eventually lay the path for green hydrogen with incremental greening of the source of electricity. Methanol is a carrier of hydrogen. It can be one of the fuel which can be used, and it can be produced from MSW, agri-waste and so on, whereas carbon intensity of biomethanol is only 2.15 kg of carbon dioxide per kg of hydrogen, with 90% of greenhouse gas emissions compared to the grid-based electrolysis. And another advantage is if you use methanol and do onboard reforming, you can have unlimited range and have long-range commercial vehicles running on that. But all this requires a lot of money. We have said that renewable energy installations are subjected to grow at the rate of about 35 to 40 gigawatts. And that means it will be 280 gigawatts to 140 gigawatts installed capacity. This will require 220 billion US dollars. That means about 3 times increase from what we are having today. Other requirement is that we should have storage of electricity, because renewable power needs storage. Today hydropower is about 51,794 megawatt, where the pump storage requirement is about, presently is about 4,746. We need much more than that if we want to get all that. Government of India has already announced a program of 100 gigawatts of pump storage facility with the incentive schemes which have been already put across. Same thing is happening in the sector of mobility, direct EVs, flex fuel vehicles, then advanced fuels like methanol, ethanol, and alternate batteries like lithium ion, sodium ion, hydrogen fuel and so on. But the main thing is that the emissions should come down to less than 100 grams per kilometer. If the present technology, most of the countries are not able to do that except Europe, whereas if you have to reach 50 grams per kilometer, you have to have EVs in a big way, plug-in hybrids and the fuel cell vehicles. Same thing is required that the overall energy storage requirement of all end-use applications is estimated to be about 2,460 gigawatt hours by 2032. This is for stationary storage as well as electric vehicles. Another area which is going to come in a big way is the use of nuclear energy. As a base load for renewable power, nuclear energy is the cleanest form of energy, and for which the new technology which is emerging is the small modular nuclear reactors, which is affordable, economic, it is modular, it can be produced like the automobiles today. It doesn't need that much of land space. It can be replacing the aging our fossil fuel plants. And best energy mix for India, especially in the net zero emission scenario, is to use renewable energy paired with a steady carbon-free source like nuclear energy. There are more than 98 SMR modules are being developed. Out of that, 56 are already active across the world. India is also working on nuclear hydrogen. Our Department of Atomic Energy is working on producing a nuclear reactor which will produce electricity as well as heat. Electricity will be used for electrolysis of water, and heat will also be used for thermochemical reduction of hydrogen, of water into hydrogen. This will be a completely clean hydrogen production method and cheapest method of doing that. One of the major requirements which is critical for us, all of us to look at, is the materials which will be needed for energy are scarce and they are required in large quantity, and hence we have to work on new mining technologies, mining methods. You can see copper, nickel, chromium, zinc, rare earths, offshore wind, onshore wind. Coal and nuclear need minimum material, but others need lots of material. So material becomes a major problem per megawatt. So the challenge is, for producing green hydrogen, almost 90% greening of the grid is required. High cost of electrolyzers and import dependency has to be reduced. Unaffordable cost of green hydrogen till 2030 is a major question. Carbon capture and utilization requires techno-commercial barriers in realizing industrial scale acceleration. Investment with government support needs to be accelerated. Harmonization of codes is required, and R&D is required for reducing the cost of carbon capture from today's $50 per ton to about less than $25 per ton. Mobility, high import of the storage battery, even today that is the problem. Low rate of penetration of clean electricity in the electrification strategy. Small modular reactors, major problem is we need more and more participation of the private sector in this, for which the Atomic Energy Regulatory Act will have to be modified, and we should do the correct fuel cycle so that we can use our thorium fuel which is available in abundance. To conclude, I will say, to promote low carbon energy transition, we need a judicious mix of the following: increase in the contribution of the renewable energy in electricity generation, use of CCUS in fossil fuel biomass power plants, use of hydrogen and methanol in the energy and transportation sectors, enabling penetration of green hydrogen in steel, refinery and chemicals, and utilization of nuclear via the SMRs. Success of strategies hinges heavily on the availability of the finances, technology collaboration, and developing inclusive carbon pricing and taxing policies, and other financial interventions that encourage the use of alternative resources and dissuade the use of fossil fuels. That is the way we can get sustainable energy. Thank you very much.